What's going on, folks? This is Out of Right Field with JP. I'm your host, JP, and this is the first ever episode of Out of Right Field. I appreciate you guys tuning in, and before we get too far into things, I would just kind of briefly like to lay out what this podcast is going to be going for. This is going to be a sports-oriented podcast, but through a conservative lens. So, everybody is fully aware that sports plays a major part of culture in this nation and globally for that matter, and it's important to know what to think about certain issues when you're a conservative. Stuff will pop up into the sports world, and it's important that you know where your values should align on these issues, and your values should align somewhere. You can't say that you don't believe in anything when it comes to cultural issues. If you're a conservative or if you're a liberal for that matter, you know where you should stand, and I'm here to help you and educate you and guide you on where you should stand as a conservative on certain sports issues going around in this nation, but also globally for that matter. So let's get into it. Before we get into the cultural aspect of what happened this weekend into sports, let's break down the biggest game of the weekend, and that was Auburn versus Alabama, number 1 versus number 2 in college basketball. This was only the 6th ever 1 versus 2 between two teams in the same conference. It was a massive rivalry game for both teams. This game was played at Alabama, where Auburn came up with the win, 94-85. And this was a very, very impressive win for the Auburn Tigers. They cemented themselves as the by far clear-cut number 1 team in the nation. Alabama did not lead at one point during the whole game. Alabama was able to tie it at one point and was able to make a big comeback, but Auburn, towards the end, pulled away and finished things off. And this was a massive win for the Tigers, like I said. As we're rolling into March, approaching March, it's time for teams to start peaking and to start playing their best basketball, and it appears that Auburn is doing that. And not only doing that, but doing that on the road against your arch rival, your in-state rival. That is a massive, massive win for Bruce Pearl and the Auburn Tigers. Not all is lost for Alabama. They are still projected to be a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament come March. They will play Auburn once again on March 8th, the last game of the regular season. This time we'll be traveling to Auburn for that game, and they will be playing at Missouri this week, who is a ranked team, so they got to flush this one quickly and then go on the road to Missouri, and then Auburn will be playing Arkansas at home, where they will be continuing or looking to continue to ride the hot streak that they're on right now as the number 1 team in the nation. All right, let's get into it, folks. I'm going to be breaking down 2 topics today that I think were the biggest events in the sports world over the weekend that intertwined with politics and where we saw the political world merge with the sports world and what you should think about that as a conservative. First, we're going to talk about the U.S. versus Canada hockey match, and then I'm going to talk about Trump making an appearance at the Daytona 500 and going in a pace car in the Beast and starting off that race with a bang. So make sure to stay tuned for that. First, let's go into this U.S. versus Canada hockey match. It took place in Montreal, Canada. They're having a tournament right now between Finland, Sweden, the U.S., and Canada. Now, everybody is fully aware of what is going on in the political world between the United States and Canada. Donald Trump has been poking fun at Trudeau and the Canadian government about becoming the 51st state ever since he got elected, and before he even got elected for that matter. He was poking fun at Trudeau, calling him the governor of Canada, and saying that they should just come into the United States umbrella and become the U.S.'s 51st state. Trudeau and Canadians obviously did not welcome this, and they have been booing the U.S. anthem at sports games in Canada ever since. We look at Raptors games and basketball. We look at all the Canadian hockey teams in Canada. Every time they play their game and the U.S. anthem is played, it is followed with boos. So this was no different. They play the U.S. anthem with the U.S. team. They're present, about to play the game, and the Montreal crowd decided to rain the anthem down with boos. So you have to wonder, how did the U.S. team react to this? Well, we had 3 fights in the first 9 minutes of that match, and they got away swinging right away. And it looks like the United States team did not take that too kindly, and I don't blame them. These are hockey guys. This is what they do. So you had to expect that there was going to be tempers flared for that, but it happened right away. Literally right when the first puck was dropped, they started swinging right out of the gate. And then the U.S. got the revenge on the scoreboard, where the United States hockey team ended up winning 3-1, and Jake Gunzel ended up with 2 scores in that game. So not only did the U.S. show their dislike for Canada booing the anthem with throwing it down right out of the gate, but then they ended up getting the win. A big win for the U.S. team. They will now be advancing to the championship game in that 4-group tournament against Finland, Sweden, and Canada. Whoever wins the next game will be playing the United States in the finals. But I'd just like to say this is very important, and this is massive because, Canada has been our northern ally for forever, it seems. I mean, it seems ever since Canada, has been a nation along with the U.S., they have been allies. They fought alongside each other in world wars, and they've had, they're big trade partners with one another. So it is a big deal that we're seeing these two neighbors, these two countries who have always been allies, it seems, now butting heads, not only in the world of politics, but in the world of sports as well, and culturally, because we're seeing Canadians no longer appreciating their neighbors to the south and are greeting them with animosity every chance they can, and making it well known to Donald Trump and to the world that they are not for becoming the 51st state of the United States. I laugh because it's funny that we're even having this conversation, but Donald Trump has brought this to the forefront. And Canada right now is kind of in a spot of in-between leaders, because although Trudeau is still the leader of Canada, the prime minister, he has announced that he will be stepping down shortly. So, who's going to be next? Will it be Pierre Poilievre? Will he win the election this year? Or will the Liberal Party in Canada promote a new leader that will win the election as well? There's a lot of confusion and a lot of disarray within the country of Canada, and Donald Trump is adding insult to injury. So Canadians greatly don't appreciate Trump making things harder for them, as they're already, it seems to be split up within their own borders, because it seems like Pierre Poilievre is gaining a lot of ground and a lot of traction. So we'll see who wins up in this upcoming election for Canada. But Donald Trump and his effect, not only within the U.S., but also globally, is making its impact in every arena of life, with sports, with culture, pop culture, everything. And we saw that example in this game where Canadians once again booed the U.S. anthem, and Canadians and American hockey players fought right out of the gate in the game. They knew right away that the gloves were coming off and they were throwing it down on the ice ring. So the U.S. ended up getting won 3-1, so that's a big win for the U.S., and we'll see if that translates to other things. But I would like to personally just now welcome Canada as the 51st state, because after that loss, you've lost your rights to be a sovereign nation now, because that game, whether you knew it or not, was determining whether you were the 51st state of the America or not. So welcome to the U.S., Canada, and stop that booing crap, because now that's your anthem. It's not the U.S.'s anthem anymore. It's also your anthem. So welcome to the team. We'll forgive all the animosity. We'll forgive all the booing nonsense if you just agree to come on in, because we won. So it's time to move on. Next, we got the Daytona 500, where Donald Trump was the pace car. That's right, he was the pace car in the beast and opening up this big weekend of the Daytona 500. So he was not only the first U.S. president to attend a Super Bowl, but he was also the first president to ride in the pace car of the Daytona 500. And, you may think this is trivial. You may think this is not that big of a deal. You may think, what does this matter? This doesn't have any implications on the grand scheme of things in politics. And I would disagree. I would disagree greatly, because this sends a message. Donald Trump going to big cultural events like the Super Bowl and the Daytona 500, it sends a message to Americans that America now has a president who cares about the country and cares about its people and cares about what's going on in the culture of America. We saw 4 years of Joe Biden where it was nothing but trips to Delaware, trips to the beach, trips to, any vacation spot, Cabo, whatever. And he was not inserting himself in the culture of the country he was ruling over. And that sends a message, because not only does it send a message that he doesn't care about what's going on in the country, but it sends a message that he's out of the loop. He is too incompetent to go and physically attend these events. It shows that the U.S. president was fragile. That's what that showed. The message was sent to the American people that not only did they have a fragile president, but they had a president who could care less about what was going on in the culture of the United States. He sat up in his ivory tower and in the White House and looked down upon the nation with almost a bit of disgust, it seemed, of just not caring about what was going on with common folk and with common U.S. citizens. And newsflash, folks, common U.S. citizens care about sports. They have their teams, they have their sports, and certain leagues that they like to watch. And it's important that the U.S. president inserts himself into that arena and shows that he cares, because it goes a long way with your favorability and your approval amongst the people that you're constantly in their face, and they're constantly seeing you, in these arenas of life that they're watching. They're tuning into the Daytona 500. They're tuning into the Super Bowl. And to see that the U.S. president is also there with them watching this game, it shows that he cares about the country and he cares about the culture. It also shows that he relates to the American citizen. He relates to people and what they care about and what is important to them. And that goes a long way, folks. That goes a long way to give sort of a sense of security and calmness to the American people that their president is right there with them. He knows what they care about. He relates to them, and it gives people a sense that they have somebody who's going to fight for what they want, fight for what they like in the White House, because he knows what they want and he knows what they like. He knows what matters to them. So he's going to fight for that. And that's what Donald Trump is showing right now, showing up to these events. He's showing the American people that he's someone that cares, and he cares about what you want as a U.S. citizen and what matters to you. What are your values? When I went to the 2019 Alabama versus LSU game, number 2 versus number 3, massive game. Some people deemed it the game of the decade in the 2020 decade. And Donald Trump was there. He flew down to Tuscaloosa, and I had to go through Secret Service. That was a new thing to me. He sat up in the press box and watched the game. Not protected by bulletproof glass, mind you. This was before the assassination attempt. So he was up at the rail in one of the press boxes, and to show the whole stadium, he was there, waving at everybody. They put him up on the big screen. It's still the loudest I've ever heard Bryant-Denny Stadium when they showed Donald Trump on the big screen. And that meant a lot to me, because it showed that my favorite sports team, Alabama, who was playing in a big game, and the U.S. president knew that it was a big game and decided to come in person. He's paying attention to the world of sports. He knows what the big games are. He knows what big games are upcoming. And he decides, I want to go and I want to show my support to the American people and watch this massive game alongside them, just to show them that I care about what they care about. And that message resonated with me. I was there. I was there in person. That message resonated with the 110,000 other people who were also there and saw that their president was watching alongside them. It meant a lot, and it meant a lot then. It means a lot now when he's going to the Super Bowl, and it meant a lot this weekend when he went to the Daytona 500. So whether you like Donald Trump or not, you can't deny one thing. He knows how to message to the American people. He knows how to play this game of politics, and he showed it with his massive landslide victory in the election, and he's showing it now with showing up to these big sporting events and showing the American people they have a president that they can count on, and they have a president who they can rely on because he relates to them and he knows what they want. Well, folks, that's all for this first episode of Out of Right Field. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll be doing these once a week on every Monday to recap what went down in the last weekend of sports. So make sure to stay tuned next week on Monday, where I'll be breaking down all the events that go on during this week of sports and tell you what you should think about it as a conservative. So until next time, see you then.